The air in Cappadocia carried a strange weight that morning. The valleys, carved by wind and time, stood silent as if they too were mourning. In the village of Gorim, the narrow streets filled with people dressed in muted colors, their eyes lowered, their steps slow. They had come to bury Mehmet Kaya. Mehmet had been a man of respect. He owned vineyards that stretched across the hills, and with the profits he funded repairs for the mosque, gave bread to the poor, and paid school fees for children whose parents could not. To the villagers, he was almost saintly, a figure who seemed untouched by the ordinary flaws of men. At the mosque courtyard, the imam recited verses softly, his voice echoing against the stone walls. Eileen, Mehmet's niece, stood close to the front. Her eyes stung with tears, yet her face was pale, distant. She had lived in Ankara for years, but Mehmet had been the only family she truly trusted, the one who always wrote letters in his careful handwriting, the one who called her every week. The coffin was lowered into the ground. Hands tossed earth over it, dull thuds filling the silence. Some women wept openly, others whispered prayers under their breath. Eileen clenched her fists. It felt impossible that Mehmet, the pillar of their family, could vanish so suddenly. After the funeral, neighbors gathered outside the Kaya family house. Tea was poured into small tulip-shaped glasses, biscuits shared, condolences offered. Yet beneath the words of sympathy, Eileen sensed something else. She noticed how some villagers exchanged uneasy glances, how few lowered their voices when she walked past. It was as if they knew something she did not. Late that night, when the house grew quiet, Eileen wandered through the corridors of her uncle's home. The stone walls held the coolness of the Cappadocian night. She passed Mehmet's study, a room she remembered from childhood, filled with books and maps. Something compelled her to step inside. On the large wooden desk lay neat piles of paper. At first, they seemed ordinary, but when she opened a drawer, she found a key. A small, iron key, old and heavy, with scratches along its surface. She frowned. Mehmet had always been careful, everything labeled, everything explained. But there was no tag, no note. Just the key, waiting. Eileen slipped it into her pocket. She could not know then that this small discovery would unravel the image of Mehmet Kaya that the entire village believed in. That night, as the wind howled softly across the valleys, the first crack appeared in the perfect portrait of her uncle's life. The next morning, the village stirred as usual, yet for Eileen the air felt heavier. She held the iron key in her palm, staring at it as the morning light filtered through lace curtains. Something inside her whispered that it did not belong in an ordinary drawer. She began searching the house. Mehmet's study, the kitchen, the storerooms, none had a lock that matched. Then, in the courtyard, she noticed a narrow door at the side of the house, half hidden by stacked firewood. The wood looked as though it had been deliberately arranged to conceal it. Moving the logs aside, Eileen revealed an old wooden door bound with iron hinges. A rusted padlock hung there. With trembling hands, she tried the key. It turned smoothly. The lock fell open with a hollow clink. She pulled the door wide. A cool draft rose from the darkness below. Stairs, carved from stone, led into a hidden cellar. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something metallic, almost like iron left too long in the rain. Lantern in hand, she descended. Dust swirled in the beam of light. The cellar was larger than she expected, with shelves lining the walls. On them were stacks of notebooks, bundles of letters, and boxes tied with twine. At the center of the room sat a single chair and table. On the table lay an open book. The handwriting was Mehmet's. Eileen leaned closer and read. Her uncle had written names. Dozens of names. Some she recognized as villagers. Others she did not. Next to each name were dates and strange symbols, like codes. Her heart pounded. She flipped through more pages. Some contained sketches of the valleys, with hidden routes marked out. Others were letters never sent, their words heavy with guilt and anger. Suddenly, a noise above made her freeze. A creak, like a footstep on wood. She extinguished the lantern, heart hammering in her throat. Silence followed. Only the wind moaned faintly outside. When she returned upstairs, the house was empty. But the feeling lingered. Someone knew she had entered the cellar. That night, Eileen lay awake, the notebook clutched to her chest. Her uncle's perfect image had begun to shatter. And she knew she had only seen the surface of his secrets. The following day, Eileen walked through Gorim's streets with unease. The villagers greeted her politely, yet she felt their eyes linger too long, as if measuring how much she already knew. At the bakery, she overheard two women whispering. "It will come out now," one said softly. "Better she does not stay too long." When Eileen stepped closer, they fell silent, their faces turning away. Later, at the tea house, an old man named Yusuf approached her. His beard was white, his eyes clouded with years. He leaned close. "You should leave, girl," he murmured. "Do not dig in Mehmet's past. Some stones are better left unturned." But Eileen could not ignore what she had seen. That evening she returned to the cellar. She opened another box, this one filled with photographs. Black and white images, some faded, some sharp. Her uncle standing with strangers, faces unsmiling. Soldiers in uniform. Men beside trucks at night. In one photograph, she recognized the square of the village, but it was from decades ago, and in the corner, a body lay covered by cloth. A cold shiver traveled her spine. In another notebook, she found details of land trades signed under different names. Properties that once belonged to widows and poor farmers. It appeared Mehmet had not always been the generous benefactor people believed. Yet what struck her most was a letter addressed to her own father, written 20 years ago. The words were heavy, almost confessional. It spoke of betrayal, of debts, of blood spilled in silence. And it ended with a single sentence: "If you ever return, the truth will burn us both." Her father had disappeared when she was a child. The family always said he had gone to work abroad and never came back. But now, staring at those words, Eileen wondered if her uncle had known far more. The room felt suddenly colder, though no wind stirred. She closed the box and hurried upstairs, her breath sharp. Outside, she noticed someone watching from across the street. A shadow moved swiftly into the alley when she turned her head. Unable to rest, Eileen sat in her uncle's study. She spread the notebooks and photographs across the desk. The house seemed to breathe around her, the stone walls holding centuries of silence. Among the letters, one envelope caught her eye. Unlike the others, it was sealed with red wax, unbroken. On the front, in Mehmet's careful hand, was her name. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. The letter was brief. "Eileen, if you are reading this, then I am gone. What you find below must not be spoken of lightly. The choices I made were not mine alone, but they will follow our blood. Trust no one, not even those who grieve beside you. Seek the cave where the pigeons roost. There lies what I could not destroy." Her pulse quickened. She knew the cave he meant. In the valleys beyond Gorim, pigeons nested in high stone cliffs, their droppings once gathered as fertilizer for the vineyards. As a child, she had played there. But why had Mehmet hidden something in the caves? And why warn her not to trust anyone? Before dawn, she packed the letter into her coat. The village slept, roofs dark against the pale light. She set off quietly, heading towards the valley where the pigeons wheeled overhead. Yet as she walked, she felt the same chill as before. Footsteps behind her. When she turned, the path was empty. Only the wind carried through the rocks. Still, she knew she was not alone. The valley stretched wide, cliffs rising like ancient walls. Hundreds of small holes pitted the rock, carved long ago for pigeons to nest. Their soft cooing echoed faintly. Eileen climbed the narrow path until she reached a cave mouth hidden behind brush. Inside, the air was cool, smelling of dust and feathers. She lit her lantern and stepped deeper. At first, the cave seemed empty. Then, in the far corner, she saw a wooden chest. Its surface was scarred, its lock broken long ago. She lifted the lid. Inside were documents wrapped in cloth. Old passports under false names. ledgers filled with numbers, letters written in languages she could not read, and at the bottom, a pistol wrapped in oilcloth. Her breath caught. This was no ordinary past. Mehmet had been involved in something vast, dangerous, perhaps criminal. One notebook in particular chilled her. It listed dates and amounts of money, alongside coded references to villages across Cappadocia. Next to several entries was the word resolved. Resolved. What had been resolved? Land disputes? Debts? Or lives? A noise behind her made her spin. The shadow of a man flickered against the cave wall. A voice spoke from the entrance, low and steady. You should not be here, Eileen. Her blood froze. The man stepped into the light. It was Yusuf, the old villager who had warned her. His expression was grave, his eyes sharp despite his age. I told you not to dig, he said. Mehmet's sins are buried for a reason. Eileen's voice shook. You knew. All of you knew. What was he? What did he do? Yusuf sighed heavily. Your uncle was not the man you thought. He dealt with people no villager should ever face. Smugglers. Soldiers. Men who paid with silence and blood. He bought his reputation with other people's lives. She stared at him, horrified. And my father? Did he know? Yusuf's gaze dropped. Your father tried to stop him. That is why he never returned. The word struck her like a blow. Her father had not abandoned her. He had vanished because of Mehmet. Before she could speak again, Yusuf moved closer. Leave this place. Take nothing. If you value your life, forget what you have seen. But Eileen clutched the notebook to her chest. No. The truth must be known. Yusuf's eyes hardened. For a moment, she feared he might strike her. But then he turned, his figure retreating into the shadows of the cave mouth. His last words lingered like smoke. Truth is a fire. Touch it, and you will burn with it. Back in the village, Eileen noticed whispers growing louder. People who once welcomed her now closed their doors when she passed. She could feel the tension building, as though everyone awaited her next move. That night, she spread the documents across her bed. Among them, she found another photograph, this one more recent. It showed her uncle, standing beside a man she did not recognize. But behind them, she saw her father's face, faint in the crowd, as though caught by accident. Her hands shook. Could her father still be alive? Before she could think further, a loud knock sounded on the door. She froze. Another knock, harder this time. She extinguished the lamp, her heart racing. Silence followed. When she gathered courage to open the door, the street was empty. The next morning, Yusuf was gone. Villagers whispered he had left for another town, but Eileen suspected otherwise. She began to realize that by uncovering Mehmet's secrets, she had stepped into the same darkness that had consumed her father. Still, she could not stop. Among the ledgers, Eileen found a folded map. The valleys of Cappadocia were marked, routes drawn in red. One mark, larger than the rest, lay near an abandoned monastery carved into the cliffs. She felt drawn to it. That evening, carrying only her lantern and the map, she set out. The monastery loomed in the fading light, its windows like dark eyes staring down. Inside, the silence was absolute. She explored the chambers, the air heavy with dust and old incense. At the far end, beneath a broken cross, she found a stone slab. Carved into it was the same symbol she had seen in Mehmet's notebooks. She pushed against the slab. With effort, it shifted, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside lay a metal box. She dragged it out, pried it open. Inside were bundles of currency, documents bearing government seals, and letters addressed to men in Ankara. Her uncle had not only been a smuggler, he had been entangled with powerful figures, perhaps even officials. The realization struck her. Mehmet's charity, his saintly image, had been built on corruption that stretched beyond the village. Then, from the shadows of the monastery, a voice spoke. You are not supposed to find this. Eileen turned sharply. A man stepped forward, tall, his coat long and dark. His face was stern, unfamiliar. I worked with your uncle, he said. He promised to keep this hidden. Now you threaten everything. Her voice trembled. Who are you? The man ignored the question. Give me the box. Leave this village. If you stay, you will end as your father did. Her blood ran cold. So my father, he is dead. The man's silence was answer enough. Before he could advance, Eileen seized the box and ran. Through the monastery halls, down the valley path, the man's footsteps echoed behind her. She stumbled over rocks, her lantern swinging wildly. At last, she reached the edge of the village, chest heaving, the box heavy in her arms. She knew now there was no one she could trust. Not even the villagers, who had lived under Mehmet's shadow for decades. Exhausted, Eileen returned to her uncle's house. She locked the door, set the box on the table, and opened one final envelope among the papers. Inside was a confession written in Mehmet's hand. I built an empire of lies. Every coin I gave, every kindness, was bought with someone else's suffering. I silenced your father because he refused to join me. If you read this, Eileen, know that the blood is on my hands, not his. But remember, truth is a dangerous inheritance. If you carry it, they will come for you, as they came for him. Eileen's tears blurred the ink. Outside, the wind howled across Cappadocia's valleys. She now understood the weight of what her uncle had left her. The village slept, unaware of the storm that was about to break over them. For Eileen, there was no return to innocence. Only the heavy burden of truth and the shadows that moved closer with every passing night.